First of all, Parliament. In the ninth Parliament, it is going to be very interesting. But what is your immediate thought with regard to how things have turned out in relation to the numbers in Parliament?
You know, before the elections, I was hoping that at least there was going to be one way or the other, one side would get a majority. But my hope was a very kind of slim majority. At some point, I had even hoped for a repeat of the eighth Parliament, a hung Parliament, because in the hung Parliament, I learned in the more than 20 years that I've been working with our Parliament, I learned a lot of new things, a lot of things that I didn't know, a lot of powers that I didn't know that Parliament had before. I saw those powers being exercised in the eighth Parliament. So, from where I sit and the work that I do, I was hoping for a repeat, or at least if one party was going to get a majority, it should be a slim majority, which would require, in most cases, some negotiation and some dialogue in order for the legislative agenda to be prosecuted. I never expected this type of majority because we've never had that in this country. So I woke up to a very interesting surprise, and a worrying one sometimes when I reflect on how majorities can be abused sometimes. So those were my immediate reactions, looking at the outcome, the numbers, and so on.
But what does it say about the Ghanaian electorate as well?
Well, what it says about the Ghanaian electorate is, number one, voters are not fools. I think that's the first lesson that I took away in terms of the Ghanaian electorate. And number two, our voting system has now become very sophisticated. The two parties have both suffered humiliating defeats at the hands of the electorate. And we hear stories about how things can be manipulated here and there. But I think in this particular election, what has happened is that we saw a very sophisticated voter because we heard a lot about vote buying and so on. People would take money, but I think people voted their conscience. And then number two, the voters have also become so sophisticated that they are willing to defend their choice at the ballot, to the extent that they can even stand up to the power of the gun and so on. And then finally, I think the other thing that I realized that from now onwards, it looks as if nobody can turn the wheel of the Ghanaian voter, in a direction other than what the voter has decided.
One of the major things that many of the political watchers and governance watchers have expressed worry over is the role of money in our politics.
Yes.
Now, looking at how things have turned out in this particular election, do you think that we are seemingly finding a cure to that?
No, we are not. Partly, at least it's a wake-up call to all our political elites that, they cannot use money to buy their way. However, there are instances where money can still play a very important role. And you cannot run an election campaign without money. So still money plays a very, very important role. I mean, I believe there were places where, the exchange of money has influenced the direction of the vote. Even though, not, totally across the country as we have seen before. You think about their party primaries, you think about, even the presidential candidates. They spend a lot of money. When you guys, they come to you and then you charge them to advertise their jingles and so on. Where is all this money coming from? Our election is run, for 4 years, because as soon as this parliament is sworn in and this government is sworn in January 7th, we are going to begin to see a lot of political party activism, and this is not regulated. So, for instance, yesterday I heard of the president-elect saying that, in the 8 years that he was opposition leader, his dedicated staff and so on and so forth, throughout those 8 years, they were running, strategizing in terms of how to come back to power. And, almost like some mini kind of campaigns were going on. All these require money, and so when we talk about the role of money and maybe electoral kind of regulation, I think these are some of the things that we are talking about. And in some countries, like in Japan, their election campaign period is only 12 days. 12 days. Anything else you do outside those 12 days is illegal and you can be in big trouble. So they open the electoral campaign period for only 12 days, and people have 12 days to campaign and get elected or get, not elected. In our country, if I ask you right now, what is the campaign period? How much time do political parties have to campaign? Do you have the answer?
No, I don't.
So that should tell you something. And throughout this, so if you are going to run a campaign, track all these things for 4 years, cumulatively, you can imagine the role of money in that. So we shouldn't see the role of money only in the kind of immediate period leading to elections. Even though I think that the power of money is now being diminished. Nonetheless, I think we need to find a way to regulate it, and that's something that we are trying to see whether we can take up in the next parliament, so that hopefully, now that both parties have had some experiences, albeit humiliating, maybe they might be willing and ready to have some conversation about this.
Now, let's talk about the numbers. You talked about how it gets you worried sometimes, looking at the seemingly absolute majority that the NDC side will be enjoying in the 9th Parliament. What exactly about it makes you worried?
What makes me worried is the fact that, when it comes to holding the government to account, all over the world, is in the majority of cases, that is the business of the opposition. It's very difficult to get members of the ruling party to be very active in holding their own to account. I just hope that we are going to see something different here. So when you look at the numbers, first of all, the absolute kind of numbers that we are going to see in the ninth parliament, and then you add to that the fact that even before the whistle was blown to commence this process leading us to where we are now, we saw a lot of heavyweights from parliament say we are not going to contest again. Rabuchi Mensabosu and a lot of senior people in the MPP are not coming back to parliament. And then we saw what happened on December 7th. A number of the experienced ones are gone. And then in addition, they don't have the numbers such a way that they can spread a lot of the experienced ones, for instance, at the committee level and then maybe their front bench and so on. So when you look at all that, then you can only get worried that except if the NDC has learned a very important lesson coming from this election, that Ghanaians abhor too much partisanship, and that even if your own is in the seat and things are not going right, as members of parliament, you have a duty to hold your own to account. If we don't see that, and we have these low numbers on the side of the opposition, and then a very high attrition of experienced members who would have been relied upon to lead the charge in terms of holding the government to account, then you can only get worried.
The NDC is saying that they will be responsible with this majority, and then they are there to serve the people of Ghana. Is that significant assurance, or the sweetness of the pudding they say is in the eating?
Yeah, let's wait and see now, because you see, I'm just hoping in the 8th Parliament, one of the members of the opposition who stands out in terms of his oversight and accountability work is Honorable Okudeto Ablakwa. We all know what he did in this country. All his, scrutinizing even the movements of the president and all the things that he did. My prayer is, if, for instance, even if he is in government as a minister, but still a member of parliament, my prayer is we are going to see him and people like him hold the same kind of whip that they held when they were in opposition. And that is when we would agree that they actually mean what they say when they have said that it's going to be a responsible kind of majority. So we wait and see.
Also, in the 8th Parliament, because of the hung nature of the House, there were some adjustments that were made to their standing orders, which are expected to kick in the next administration. For instance, where it will have some, committees being headed by the minority. Would that not, help in maintaining the checks and balances in Parliament, despite the absolute majority the NDC is going to enjoy?
Yes, indeed. In fact, I think that the Right Honourable Speaker must be commended for that, and the members of the 8th Parliament, particularly both caucuses, must be commended. These standing orders, we have been at it for more than 20 years. I have had a project that was supposed to revise the standing orders. Other partners that we have worked with have had, but it never happened. So I think we thank the Right Honourable Speaker for this kind of transformational initiative. At least when this was being done, nobody knew what we were going to get into. But now, I think they have to live with it. They have to share power, even if they have an absolute majority. they will have to share power, which is what we want. And hopefully, I think that can really help in terms of putting some guardrails against some of the excesses that maybe could come out of a government that has huge numbers in parliament.
Looking at some of the people that lost in parliament, which of them surprised you?
You know, one of my biggest surprises was well, there were two of them. Honorable Katie Hammond, and then Honorable Ajapa Mesa. You know, so number one, in second D, I think that since 1992, no party apart from the MPP has held that seat. So for me, it came as a very huge surprise. And then to have somebody like Katie Hammond, Honorable, you know, very experienced from Ashanti region, minister, and you know, having been in parliament for all these years, that for me was also a shocker. It was a big surprise. It was a big surprise, and the likes of him, you know, a lot of experience, but he also brings when things are tense in parliament. I think you guys know he plays a very important role in terms of diffusing tension with his humorous kind of approach to looking at things, even when sometimes people criticize him that, you know, when things are serious, he doesn't appear to be serious. I think, that character is very important in the kind of democracy, divisive democracy that we have. So these are some of them that really surprised me.
Back to the conversation about the numbers and you being worried sometimes. Aside the aspect where it could be abused, does it have a positive side as well?
Yes, indeed, it does. You know, for instance, we have been at this constitutional review process for a very long time, since the time of our late president, Atta Mills. The Kenyans started their constitutional review before us, after us. But the Kenyans have had a constitution that is more than 10 years old now. And it has done a lot of great things for that East African country. In our situation, every step, then the thing is thrown out because there was no party that had the two-thirds majority required, at least to do some of the changes that did not require a referendum and so on. And there are so many issues that are candidates for review in our constitution. So the positive side of it is, I would like to see, hopefully, the numbers being used to ensure that all the things that all of us have been talking about in terms of the changes that we want to see in our constitution, at least could be done. They have the numbers now. Number two, I would also like to see, hopefully, if they say they are going to be responsible, you know, when there are important bills, these bills looked at very carefully and done very well, then they use their numbers to pass them without any delays and so on. Then maybe some of the transformational things sometimes that get stuck. Like, you remember when we were doing the freedom of information, it took very, very long, and it's all because sometimes the numbers are not there, and then you fear that, we've had a number of, other bills that are stuck in Parliament. For instance, they are trying to review this constitutional provision about dual citizenship, which affects most people, including people who are close to some of us. then hopefully now that they have these numbers, I think they can use it. Sometimes there's something that we call, I'm trying to search for the word. I mean, where you can do something that is negative, but I think it's for the benefit of the people. So they can use their numbers to, push through some of these things that citizens are calling for, even if there are voices that oppose it in Parliament. So that is the positive aspect of it. I think the numbers can help them to do a lot of the things, for instance, that when they were in opposition, they were calling for, but they didn't have the numbers. So there's a very positive aspect of it, and I hope they will exploit it, to the maximum.
Doc, thank you so much for speaking to us. We're very grateful for your time, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
You had us speak to Dr. Rashid Rahman, the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Well, there are two sides to the coin. It can either be used in a good way or it can also be used in a negative way. So let's see, which side will they be on? Yesterday when Just Bar Mokhtari was here, she says, well, they will be using it to the people's good. Like they say, the sweetness of the pudding is in the eating. So everybody will be keeping their eyes on Parliament, looking at the numbers that the NDC does have and see how they will explore or use it. And eventually, in 4 years' time, if the people of Ghana are impressed with how it has gone, they may give them another. If they are not, they will take away that absolute majority from them. It's still the Morning Star here on Star 103.5 FM. Let's go for a break. When I return, Mutala is here. We'll bring you Legal Check.